Welcome to Squirrel, the podcast for distracted writers, hosted by Candace J. Thomas and Jody L. Milner.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Squirrel. This is Candace.
And this is Jody.
And welcome to episode 35. We are doing books on the fives. Yay!
Woot!
And Jody's so excited about this episode. Oh my gosh. We're doing Fairytale Retellings. How excited. Tell us, Jody, how do you feel about Fairytale Retellings?
I found that I don't read as many of them as you do.
That's not exactly true. It looks like I read a lot, or that I'm...
Again,
they're always in
when
my
you get to put your notes
list,
first, I have to scramble harder. Like, those are the three I was going to use.
Really? Where?
Oh,
really?
Marissa Meyer, of course. Duh.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry.
I mean, that's like my first really good, Cinderella retelling that I actually like. Because there's very few Cinderella retellings I like.
See, out of all the princesses, Cinderella is my least favorite. So I will not read Cinderella retellings. The fact that Cinderella was a cyborg, that changed things for me.
It definitely, the tone was different.
It was not Cinderella. It was a sci-fi fantasy. It was amazing. We're going
to talk about that in a minute.
Yes.
Sorry, I got ahead of you.
I picked Fairytale Retellings because I know that universally we understand a lot about fairy tales. It's kind of ingrained into our culture. And so I really wanted to talk about how people have changed what is natural to us, understanding those stories, how they've improved it or changed it or whatever, and suggest those type of things. I also wanted to make mention that fairytale retellings are very popular. So if you want to rewrite your own version of something, I suggest that you do. That is a really great exercise in storytelling, to take something, it's almost fan fiction, take something that was once, a story to scare children and change it to something that is still entertaining today.
You hear that here first. Retellings are sanctioned fan fiction that you can sell for money. Go for it.
Awesome.
If you want to make Snow White a zombie, dude.
Yes.
Be awesome.
Okay. It would be so good, right? Okay, I just want to know, before we actually start anything, what is your favorite fairy tale?
My favorite fairy tale.
That was really hard to say.
It is.
What is your favorite fairy tale?
All right, so I like the Snow Queen, not because the original story is really weird, but that we see elements of the Snow Queen story pop up in really interesting places. So we see it in The White Witch of Narnia. That is a nod to the Snow Queen.
Okay.
Absolutely. And Elsa is a huge nod to the Snow Queen.
Yeah.
So I actually went through and was reading about what the original story was about, because I'm like, I don't actually remember what the original story is about. And it's kind of bizarre.
That's Hans Christian Andersen, right?
Yeah, it's a Hans Christian Andersen, where there's a troll that goes around and spreads these glass shards of discontent. And it makes people really mean and nasty. And there's these two soulmate girl-boy people. They're young, so it's weird. And the boy gets crystal shards, and the girl's like, I want you to be nice again. And so she goes on a quest to fix it.
Okay, that has nothing to do with, I swear.
There's a Snow Queen in there. But that's the final chapter. That is the climax where you have to get to the final boss. Everyone else is a mini boss. She's the big boss. Sorry, video game lingo.
No, it's okay.
Where you have to defeat the Snow Queen's ultimate riddle to dissolve these nasty glass shards that make you mean. It's a very strange story.
Bizarre.
Yeah. I'm surprised there is a movie about it somewhere. I haven't seen it. I don't think I will.
That's interesting.
How about you?
I wrote Snow White and Rose Red. That is a different fairy tale than just the Snow White one. It's about two sisters that live in the woods. Snow White and Rose Red. And it's one of my favorites. We had, do you remember? You mentioned Troll. The Troll book orders or they're like the scholastic book orders that you get in elementary school, and you pick out books. And we got one, and it was Snow White and Rose Red. And I got it because there was a blonde and a brunette, and they're sisters. And that's exactly like me and my sister. And we are the only girls in the family. So we often played Snow White and Rose Red out when we were younger. And I love the tale. It's really weird. Like this, it's about, there's a bear that comes in, and he's all sopping wet, and they bring him in by the fire.
Again, fairy tales are weird.
Yeah. The bear, not to spoil it, but he's a prince, right? But there's also this dwarf that gets his beard stuck in a tree, and they have to cut it off, and he's so mad. And I don't even remember why he's in the story, but I loved this tale. Anyway, I've often been playing around with this story in my head, thinking that how could I remake it? I've yet to come up with a really good idea. But yeah, that one's mine. There you
go. All right.
Okay.
Makes me miss not having a sister.
I'm so sorry.
Didn't get to play fairy tales with family.
Yeah. Sisters are great, but they're also a lot of work.
So. I imagine.
Yes. Okay. Have you ever attempted a retelling?
I have not. Do I think elements of these fairy tales slip into my work regardless? Because there are themes that come up in fairy tales a lot that I think has flavored everybody's take on how they do fiction.
Yeah.
Like love conquers all, magical trinkets, like all of these things originated in these fairy tales. And so I think we've all been borrowing, without knowing it, fairy tale elements into our stories,
possible.
although now our stories are required to make some sense.
Okay, so my question is, what should we consider when attempting a retelling? I mean, just in general, because everyone is so familiar with the stories, what are some precautions maybe that you can see?
Well, I think we should definitely stretch the imagination. I think that we should be finding these lesser known fairy tales and exploiting them for all they're worth. No,
I love finding that stories, like there's so many obscure ones that could make really great stories.
Tell. But I think the most successful fairy tales that are being redone now are the ones that are taking a lot of creative liberties with how the story works and only just touching on those key points that happen. I mean, we go back to Cinder because we talked about Cinder, but like that's exactly what happens. It's a far stretch from a Cinderella story. It just touches on those key moments here and there. So I think if we try to tie too closely to the source material, it's going to end up feeling kind of weird.
Well, I know that the Court of Thorns and Roses is very Beauty and the Beast. So, and I don't know if that's exactly where she got the ideas or what she was trying to go with in creating a Beauty and the Beast story, but that's how it's actually marketed, is as a Beauty and the Beast retelling. But
I see nods, yes.
Yeah, it's nods, but it's not. It's
the story
definitely
has
not.
nothing to do.
Yeah. So anyway,
no, I get it. Okay.
The only concern I have with fairy tale retellings, honestly, is when you massacre it. I don't know exactly if that's the right way to say it, but I'm not a big fan of Gregory Maguire. And he is famous for taking famous stories like Wicked, like Mirror Mirror, like Snow White, and doing these stories that are dark and jarring to a point. And it was hard for me to get it to step into those. So I also think that you can stay faithful to the story, you can veer off of it, but it was just upsetting, honestly, to read that it was so far detached from what I expected the story tells to be.
I liked it.
You liked Wicked?
I did. I thought it was fascinating. It was a different treatment than I was expecting, but that didn't throw me. I just was, I was intrigued of where it was going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And he was building a world that was way different than how I had imagined the whole Wizard of Oz world to be. And I've read all the original Wizard of Oz books, but it took the rosy colored glasses off and like, it's a real world. It's got real politics. It's got real problems, and people,
maybe that's why
people are nasty.
I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I didn't like the book at all.
So yeah, it did show the dirt under the fingernails of the world, and for me, I'm just like, it
was kind of cool
like
for you. Yeah. I didn't. Yeah. We won't talk about Wicked. That's not really a fairy tale. So, okay. First retellings that you watched or read. Go.
Oh man. I actually had to really stretch back to be like, I'm pretty sure Looney Tunes actually did quite a few fairy tales. And you just don't really think about it because it's being delivered in this very, very innocent format, where Bugs Bunny is Rapunzel and like the prince that's coming to rescue is actually the hunter guy whose name I just forgot.
Elmer Fudd.
Yes, it's Elmer Fudd. And
yeah,
it's just these bite-sized little hints of these fairy tales. And so there's that. I'm pretty sure Mickey and Friends did quite a few.
Well, they did Mickey and the Beanstalk.
There's Mickey and the Beanstalk. There's A Prince and the Pauper.
Yeah.
There's quite a few of those as well that I think those stayed truer to like the actual telling of the story, whereas Looney Tunes are just like, I think it'd be really funny to put Bugs Bunny in a wig.
Oh my gosh, always.
Sure.
On that note, I loved my Looney Tunes. My two favorites are Daffy and the Beanstalk, the one where he goes up to get the gold and jewels. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. And the Hansel and Gretel one, where he's like, Hansel. Anyway, I referenced Fractured Fairytales from from Rocky and Bullwinkle, and I have a book of those Fractured Fairytales. I loved those. I think they were zany, and I always gravitated to the zany stuff when I was younger. So
there's a book of politically correct fairy tales where they just changed the little pieces of them, where it's funny, but at the same time, I'm like, it's not funny, haha.
Yeah, somebody gave me that as well. I have that book as well. I want to mention I don't remember the title. There's a Jack and the Beanstalk retelling that was a cowboy retelling. So he had like his beans were like to go into chili or something.
Sure.
I don't remember now. I'll have to find that for the blog. And then The Stinky Cheese Man is one of my very, very favorite books ever. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Nope.
Okay, it's in my bookcase. You have to read it. It's amazing.
Am I going to go home with homework?
Yes, John Siska. Oh my gosh. It is incredible. And Lane Smith is the artist. So Lane Smith is an amazing illustrator as well. And it's so worth it. And it's a children's book. It's a picture book. And it is hilarious.
Is it the Sticky Cheese Man or the Stinky Cheese Man?
Stinky Cheese Man.
All right.
Don't look at my notes because that's me voice to texting.
Right.
Picked up the
I'll
sticky
say this
cheese.
again, but could we maybe edit these
No.
before?
I don't read right off the page, so I know what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
This is just my visual note so that I know what to say.
So glad.
Yeah.
All right. So how about books that you enjoyed as an adult that you really had no idea were actually based on fairy tales?
I can think of Book of 1,000 Days by Shannon Hale. That was a amazing book, honestly. And it's The Girl in a Tower. It's based off of an obscure Brothers Grimm, and I believe that I wrote it's Maid Maylene is the tale from the Brothers Grimm about it's like a tower this princess wants to marry this prince, and her father forbids it and locks her in a tower that has no light and no doors. But she's given like a maidservant to be with.
What is wrong with these people?
I don't know. Isn't it funny?
Girls in towers.
It's all about virtue. Didn't you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
but A Book of 1,000 Days is actually told from the servant's point of view. And so it adds a different depth to it. It's not the prince that you're really, the prince that wants to marry the princess. That's not the story. It's about the servant and what she does and how she saves her princess and how she finds her own love. It's great. I highly recommend that one. But I didn't know that it was a retelling. And she does a bit of an Asian flair to it, kind of Mongolian flavor to it. And so I had no idea that it was a Brothers Grimm.
Wow.
So how about you?
So this one is a bit of a stretch, but the more you look at it, the more you're like, oh yeah. So it's Howl's Moving Castle. It has tons of fairy tale elements in it. Like you've got a girl with a curse. You've got a forced arrangement where she needs to be with, the wizard Howl, and he's not very nice in the beginning. There is a wicked witch. There is all sorts of other things, quests that need to be done. So it's got all these cool fairy tale elements, and none of them a specific fairy tale, but it's got those vibes. So, I mean, the strongest would be a Beauty and the Beast retelling because, she's the innocent girl and she's trapped with a not so nice guy. And they have to figure out how to make it work. And it's her perseverance that ends up saving him, which is a key element of Beauty and the Beast. It's her effort and her heart that ends up saving him.
That's awesome. Do you like the movie or the book better?
I prefer the book. The book gives you the context that makes all of the pieces when they come together make sense. The first time I watched the movie, I'm just like, what is going on?
Yeah, the book is really fun.
The book is very nice.
I really like the book. Okay, we're going to go into the most imaginative retellings that you have read. What do you think? We already talked about Cinder, but should we talk more about Cinder?
I think we can now just drill down to why it was effective.
Cinder is the first of the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer, and Cinder is a cyborg. So the difference of what I liked about this in the retelling, it's in a futuristic Asia. I want to say China because it was Beijing or Shanghai or something like that.
Yeah.
And she has a like a metal foot. I remember that because when she's running away from the prince during that moment of, she loses her foot.
Instead of a shoe.
Instead of a shoe. But it is so much fun. That book is so much fun. And it's a good narrative of Cinderella in general, but it is like so mind-blowingly creative in how even some of the elements, like she's got for the carriage, they have a old Volkswagen Beetle. That's the carriage that is taking her to the ball, sort of, So there's Cinder. I also put Cress, which is the third in the Lunar Chronicles, and that one is a Rapunzel retelling where Rapunzel is stuck in a satellite. That's the tower. That's why her hair's so long. That's why she's lonely. That's why she can't get out. So smart. And that satellite drops into a desert. I mean, all of the elements are there. It's so fun to read. I loved that book as well. What about you? Now that I've gushed over those books.
So my pick for an imaginative retelling would be Uprooted by Naomi Novik, where she's pulling in, again, a lot of fairy tale elements, but it has a very strong, and apparently I have a favorite fairy tale. I keep on going back to Beauty and the Beast. Go figure. But where it starts out with, the awkward girl who doesn't really know how to do anything, and she ends up being chosen to go be in the castle with, a not so friendly magic guy. He's got all these responsibilities, and she's just trying to figure out how to, not go crazy. But all of these pieces come together, so it's beautifully done, and the resolution is one of those just breathtaking experiences. Just how everything comes together. It's very cool.
And Novik does a lot of retellings, because I think
Spinning Silver is the other one.
That's a Rumpelstiltskin, is it?
It's got a lot of nods to Rumpelstiltskin. Okay. Yeah,
very good. I'm trying to remember. That was so many books ago, and I just thought of it.
Would that be Sleeping Beauty with the
thimble? Yeah, the spindle and the spinning wheel.
Possibly. It's been just long enough that I'm not sure which one.
Well, yeah, it's been so many books ago. Everyone correct us and let us know what's wrong. So, cool. All right, what's your favorites?
Favorite? I had a really hard time picking, but I did recently read Gilded. There's the Gilded duology. Again, this is a Marissa Meyer. And this one is mixing Rapunzel with the Legends of the Earl King. So it's...
What's the Earl King? Do I know
So
that?
it's a European folklore where there is this malicious sprite that lives in the woods, and it might be technically a fae. And if young children wander into the woods, he steals them away. And there's a popular piece of classical music called The Earl King. And it's got, they're singing about this father and son who are desperately trying to get through the forest. And the son sees the Earl King, and he's like, my father, he's got fire in his eyes. And the dad's just like, let's go faster. Let's please go faster. And there is a big thing that happens at the end, and I'm not going to tell because that would be a massive spoiler, and that would be rude of me. Look up the Earl King, and I think that is a shoe bear. Again, if we find these, we will put them in the blog.
Yes, the blog will be full of things.
Very interesting things.
Yes, I picked A Piece of Sky by Anne Hunter, and Anne Hunter is a friend of ours.
Mm-hmm.
But I was so touched by this book. It's packaged in a really cute way. It's got a beautiful chicken. The Piece of Sky is a little red hen. About the, who's going to help me do this and who's going to help me do that. And it was so touching, this little book. I own it, but I also listened to it. It didn't take very long to listen to, just a couple of hours. But it's read by the guy who does the Pillsbury Doughboy.
Wow.
And it is the cutest because he's got such a cute little voice. I can't do it, but it is delightful, and it has a really great message to it about doing hard things and finding your own piece of sky, and it was lovely. So I know that seems so strange for it to be my favorite, but I love this book, and
You've
all
mentioned
props
it before.
to it. Yep. Any recommendations now that we're done?
Now that we're done and wrapping things up, if you haven't read Howl's Moving Castle, I think everyone should read that one at least once, especially if that's something that would interest them. Like if you liked any of the Miyazaki stuff, like this has all the flavor of it, but a lot more depth. So that's my retelling or my fairy tale inspired book that I recommend.
Well, and Cinder, of course, just read the whole Lunar Chronicles. It's pretty amazing. I put Goose Girl by Shannon Hale because that was the first book that I read from her, and the prose are amazing. It's beautiful. And the Goose Girl as a retelling is only like a page. It's very small, but there's a lot of elements that made it into the novel, which I was very impressed by. And Daughter of the Moon Goddess, which is Su Lin Tan, and that's a Chinese fairy tale retelling, which is extremely popular at the moment, all these different Asian retellings, and that was lovely. I'm not familiar enough with the original tale to know, but there's a whole half of the world that is, so I hope that they can tell me what the real story is. But yeah, those are mine. So I don't have any like specific finishing thoughts, but For your listener assignment, I just thought maybe you could seek out a fairy tale, maybe obscure one, and see how you might rewrite it and retell it in your own words. So there's your assignment.
All right.
Yay! Okay, so tell us, what is next?
Well, our next episode is going to fall rather close to March 15th, which is the Ides of March, et tu brute and all. So we're going to talk writing betrayals and twists in our novels.
Okay. That sounds like a lot of fun. It's going to challenge me for sure.
Probably.
That sounds awesome. Thank you.
Alrighty. A huge thanks for listening today. If you enjoyed anything we mentioned, if we beefed up your reading list, remember we do have a Patreon and a Buy Us a Coffee. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. This has been terrific.
Yay. Read all the books, everyone.
Read all the books. All right. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Squirrel Podcast for the Distracted Writer with Candace J. Thomas and Jody L. Milner. Please like and subscribe to our podcast for updates and new episodes, and find more information at our website, squirrelpodcast.com. Stay distracted, everyone.
I have a book for you.
Uh-oh.
I just thought of it. It's a rom-com. You okay with that?
I'll live. Is it an Emily Henry?
No.
All right.
No. It's Catherine Center. Anyway, so
you're saying these names like I know more than one.
Never mind. It's called, well, I just read it. It's new. It's new from last year, but it's called The Rom-Commers. And the lady, she's hilarious, like the lead person, but she has wild, red, fiery, crazy hair.
Oh, good. I'm so glad we're going to relate to each other.
Yes. No. And she says that she constantly has to put into a big knot at the top of her head.
You know what kind of day I'm having, depending on how tightly the hair has been tied down.